As the full moon rises above the fields, shadows begin to move. What lurks within the darkness has glaring eyes fixed upon you. Now join your host Vonda during this hour of the haunted harvest moon.
On this harvest moon.
Okay, everyone. Hopefully, we got this server problem figured out. And I sent a message out in the chat room. If you cannot hear, you need to refresh. So hopefully, we got everybody set. And anybody out there that's not logged into the chat room can read the refresh notes that I've put out. Sorry for the delay. We had a little server problem. I think I got it fixed. We hope we got it fixed. We're going to have a great show. Got somebody on the show tonight that is just awesome. I don't think an hour is going to be long enough for us with our guest tonight. He is a paranormal investigator, a world traveler. He thinks outside the box. My kind of guy. We all like to think outside the box. That's the paranormal. While his father wanted him to be a Baptist minister, he decided he wanted to go live on the Navajo Reservation. And he taught school, wrote articles, and he has saw some UFOs, some unexplainable events on the reservation. So I want to welcome Hoss Lors. He is going to tell us all about the Skinwalkers and probably has a little bit of info on the Skinwalker Ranch as well. How are you doing?
Excellent. How are you this evening?
Well, now that we got the server problem figured out, I'm doing good.
Well, I think the server was Skinwalkers, so it's okay.
Yeah, and you did. I will tell everybody, he did say that when I called to let him know I was battling a problem and to bear with me. He blamed it on the Skinwalkers. So, yeah.
It's not surprising.
And, it's funny because I've done other shows, with the paranormal, and I get lights flashing in my little room down here, and Andrea Perrin with the movie The Conjuring, I've had different things happen every time I've had her on my show, so I'm starting to believe that they kind of know when we're going to talk about them.
They do. I was doing another radio show just 2-3 weeks ago, and it was almost as if something came over the house. My phone, electricity, everything, lights, everything went black for probably about 5 minutes. Lost radio connection, lost everything. And then all of a sudden everything just poof, came right back up on. And it was just their way of saying, hey, we're listening. So, I believe.
Yeah, I do too. So for all of our listeners out there that don't really know what a Skinwalker is, can you kind of explain that to them?
Absolutely. I had no idea. I was really, really naive when I first came to the Navajo Reservation, and I'd like to just give a shout-out to all of my friends on the Navajo Reservation. Love you all. But a Skinwalker is a shapeshifter. It is a person, be it male or female, that has gone through a ritual. I don't know how detailed you want me to get, but the ritual involves sacrificing one of your relatives, preferably a younger child, and you sacrifice that child so that you become initiated into the Skinwalker way of life, and that's exactly what it is. So, in a short, it's a person who can shift themselves into the form of, be it a wolf, a bear, a coyote, any animal that it has the skin of that animal, and it puts the skin on, as I've been told, and becomes that animal and can travel great distances very quickly.
Now, you lived on a Navajo reservation, and what did you do on the Navajo reservation? What was what kind of give us a little detail of what that is and what everybody
Sure.
kind of, so they have a round
Not a
picture
problem.
of it.
Sure. I live on the Crow Reservation in Montana now, and I used to live on the Navajo Reservation. I was a teacher. I came back from Korea, and I was pretty broken up, and I got hit by a semi in Korea, which is a whole other story. But got to the Navajo Reservation. An old friend of mine, Lieutenant Colonel, he gave me a job as a teacher there, and so I just took and started teaching. And you know, I got to Halloween, my first Halloween, and I asked the kids, I'm teaching creative writing, and my kids are just like, I said, hey, give me scary stories. And, they gave me some basic scary stories, some silly, they know I love to laugh and joke, so they gave me some pretty funny stories of tipping outhouses over, because we still have outhouses out on the Navajo Reservation. The Navajo Reservation is as big as the state of Ohio. It is the biggest reservation in the United States. There's probably close to 1 million Navajos now. They are the largest tribe in the United States, and they are just wonderful, wonderful people. Pinon, Arizona, which is where I was teaching, is in the middle of nowhere, quite literally. And the road ends, the paved road ends when you get to Pinon. There's a lot of dirt roads going out, but we're talking very, very remote. So one of my students wrote this really kind of scary story, but a very, very real kind of expiation. And he's telling me about his mother. And if you'll indulge me for a second, I'll tell you the story, if that's okay.
Sure, go ahead. Love to hear it.
Sure. So he took and he's telling me about his mom. His mom was what the Navajos call a Galani, and she's an alcoholic, and she begged for a living, and she really had chosen a very hard life, because it is a life choice, and not a good one. And so she was hitchhiking between Chinle, Arizona, and Pinon, Arizona, which is probably 50 miles long, high desert stretch. She got picked up by two men, and she was very drunk. They put her in the back of the truck, and they took her out to Black Mesa. And that's a ways out from Pinon, out in, very remote country, and they had a pit dug in their hogan. A hogan is a traditional Navajo dwelling. They kind of had a pit with a trap door, and so they put her down there and just locked her away for 2-3 days, let her dry out. And when she kind of came to herself, they brought her up out of the pit and brought her into the hogan proper, and they said, you have two choices. We can kill you, or you can take and choose one of your children. We'll go and get that child with you, and you can sacrifice that child and become a skinwalker. And so this young man's telling me this story, he's writing it all out and turning it in, and I'm kind of reading it, and editing it, and I'm just kind of thinking, whoa, I've never heard of a skinwalker. I don't know what any of this is, and you're really, really skeptical, especially, I'm Hungarian, white, not really exposed to anything like that. So he said the expiation portion of his whole writing was that she chose his sister over him, his younger sister, and she came back and she explained it to him and told him, that is what was going to have to happen, because, he was her oldest son, and he was going to live, and his sister he never saw again, and she became a skinwalker, and he would see her from time to time, but to this day, he has no real contact with his mother. So I kind of checked around, in Pinon and asked different medicine men and different people that I knew about the story, and they confirmed that while, I didn't give names, that was very, very possible. So That's
Wow.
kind of in short, how you become a skinwalker. It's a pretty horrible thing, but
Yeah, I mean, to sacrifice a child, you know,
yeah.
to that was kind of one of my questions. You got to do some pretty dark deeds to obtain this power, and one of them is to, murder your own family member. I just to be a skinwalker, and what advantages do you have of being a skinwalker?
I don't know what advantages you would have. I think it's kind of like making a deal with a demon or making a deal with, a darker side of things. Your advantages are that you're going to be able to travel, vast distances, but I think in Navajo tradition, you can gain a lot of wealth, you can gain a lot of cars and trucks and land and sheep and different things. So it's a way of acquiring things. Back in the, late 1800s, probably their greatest chief was Chief Manulito, and he led a group of law enforcement officers, and he rounded up 40 skinwalkers, and he put them to death. He killed them. And it is still to this day legal to kill a skinwalker on the Navajo reservation. That is not against the law. But one of the ways that he found to find them, was because so many of them had accumulated such wealth.
Wow. So
Yeah.
on the reservation, you can kill a skinwalker, and
Yes.
no charges or anything will be brought against you.
Absolutely not.
Wow.
There's a man. He's an attorney. His name's Bill Battles, and he's a good friend of mine. He's an Ivy League graduate and an excellent attorney. He's probably in his 70s now, and we were talking about skinwalkers one night, and he was telling me about a really fascinating story from the early 1970s. It's in my book, and it just details how witchcraft is part of Navajo culture, and it is there's positive things that medicine men do, and there's really, really good witchcraft that I don't like to use the word witchcraft to associate with because it's such a pejorative term, but it's an amazing thing because you also have the dark side, and the dark side comprises maybe 1% of all Navajo society, but the rest of it is such a wonderful traditional society. And one of the ladies at Dene College, Linda Frank, she was always like, Jeff, make sure you take and emphasize the positive when it comes to medicine men and the healing ceremonies and the curing ceremonies. So
Now, how can you tell? I mean, you kind of gave us a brief description on a skinwalker, but how can you prove that it's a skinwalker? That was one of the questions in our chat room as well. How can you prove, that he is a skinwalker?
I could not answer that. I would say a medicine man, a Navajo medicine man, could answer that better than I can. But the Navajos, they know. They know through feel and through, communications with different entities, within Navajo culture. The holy people are what the good medicine men, they communicate with the holy people, and when they communicate with the holy people, I'm sure that they can indicate whether it is this person is a skinwalker or is not a skinwalker.
So, has innocent people been murdered on a Navajo reservation thinking that they were skinwalkers?
That's entirely possible. I don't know. I would
Pretty interesting.
I would think I would probably think no, because it's I can give my story. The first time I really came face to face with two skinwalkers, I was going out to feed the horses in the evening, and I heard someone kind of chanting, doing a prayer, and the ranch, where we live is pretty remote in Greasewood, Arizona, and this is after I'd left Pinon, and so I was ranching, and the horses are worth quite a bit of money, and my wife was rodeoing and doing really well. So someone had hired or had asked skinwalkers or, people that do, negative witchcraft to come and witchcraft the horses. So I hear this chanting and sing, and I'm thinking, boy, I don't speak Navajo. I wonder, what is going on? And I went back inside and brought my wife out, and she started to translate from Navajo to English, and what it was a curse on our property, a curse on our horses, a curse on, her riding. And I was pretty angry. I have pretty bad temper, so I was just like, whoa, and I climbed up the panel, and we're out in the West, so we always have a gun handy, and so I pulled my .38 out, and I was just like, don't sit here and pray and chant and threaten, my horses and my property and, our rodeo fortunes without showing yourself. And so I'm challenging whoever's out there, thinking it's a couple of, Navajo people who are out there, singing this curse to us. And up maybe 10 feet away, up out of the ground, just like coming out of a hole in the ground, just these two half human, half wolves with glowing red orb eyes they just come right up out at me. And I mean, it was frightening.
Wow.
I had no doubt that they were skinwalkers. And they came up toward me, and I just leveled my .38 at them, and I went click, 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 click. Went through all 6 rounds. It was a revolver, and went through all 6 rounds. Not one of them fired. And so, if one of them would have fired, would I have killed a skinwalker? Well, that's up for debate. There's so many different theories that I've read on killing skinwalkers, and I've talked to different medicine men about, what would have happened, if one had fired. But they had control over that gun. And the next morning I took the gun out and fired the gun, and the gun fired fine. So I have no doubt that they had control over that gun.
So
one medicine man had suggested that I dip the bullets in ash, and that will allow you to, fire at a skinwalker. And then he said you have to hit him in the neck. You can't hit him in the head or in the body, or it won't do anything. And so, when you have 2 skinwalkers that are half human wolves with glowing eyes coming at you about 10 feet away, you're not exactly aiming at the neck. You're just squeezing. So
you're just going to be aiming.
It was pretty frightening.
Yeah. So, wow. So they, I guess, I know you didn't like to use the word witchcraft, but, they obviously can put spells on people, objects.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. With skinwalkers, you can use the word witchcraft, but then there's a whole other side of Navajo culture that deals with healing. And some people call that witchcraft, but I would not. So
you don't call the healing witchcraft?
I would, yeah. I'll give you an example. It's easier for me to give you a story example.
Okay.
But the wonderful reason that I lived with Navajo people for so long is because they are a culture of stories, and I love stories. I've lived all over the world listening to stories. So, you'll have to indulge me one more story here. But I was in Dilcon, and this dog came up the road and into our driveway and into the garage. And I'll make this brief. I put the 2 dogs on this dog, because it was really just foaming at the mouth and looked, pretty bad and looked like it had rabies or something. So I just wanted to chase it off. And the dogs kind of squealed, and I let him in the house, and this dog just kept coming up, into the garage and, at me. And so I grabbed a 2x4, and I thought, oh, this dog has rabies, so I'll just take and I hit the dog over the head with a 2x4. I hit it 2 or 3 times and killed it. because, you know, we had children there and everything, so, you know, we didn't want to have a rabid dog around, and put the dog out of its misery, put the dog on one of my T-shirts or a rag or something that was out in the garage and kind of drug it out, threw it out in the snow. Went in the house, told my wife, hey, you know, I'm going to take this dog, take it out to the dump, you know, and dump it, put my boots on, walk back out. I look outside the door, there's no dog. There's nothing.
Wow.
And I'm like, whoa. I mean, this is snow, so I should have, you know, there should be something, or, you know, the dog walked away. Fast forward a day, I'm deathly ill. All I wanted to do was die. I mean, I was just that ill. And my neighbor came over and he says, hey, you got to go see a medicine man. And I was like, no, that's okay. You know, I don't want to go to a medicine man. I'm just going to lie here in the fetal position and die. And he's like, well, I'm going to go out, and he says, your wife and I are going to drive out and see this medicine man. So they drove about 45 minutes out to the medicine man, and the medicine man just looked at them and said, you know, where's Haas? How come he's not here? If you don't bring him, he'll be dead by morning.
Oh.
And so they came back, and they wrapped me up in a big Pendleton and put me into my buddy's Nissan Pathfinder, drove me out there, and it's snowing and blowing cold, and the medicine man lives in a traditional hogan, and he's got a fire in the middle, and so he just has me in, and we all sit in a circle around the fire, and he mixes up this potion, and he says, okay, put this in your mouth and start chewing. So I put it in my mouth and I start chewing. He says, don't swallow until I get done with this prayer. And I'm like, oh, great. Knowing how long Navajo medicine men pray, I'm going to be chewing for a while. So I'm sitting here chewing, and I start foaming at the mouth, and, you know, it's just the light of the fire, and I'm just taking and chewing and chewing and chewing, and I'm completely out of it. I'm really, really pretty, it's almost comatose chewing, and I was just not in a good spot. So I take, and he finally says, you know, he finally finishes his prayer, and I swallow, and I just come completely out of it, and I'm fine.
Wow.
And I'm looking around at everybody going, you know, what am I doing here? What's happening? And he starts laughing because he knows I'm an idiot. It's just like, oh, wow, you know, are you all right? And I'm like, yeah. And the little boy who is my buddy's little boy, I said, where is he? And he goes, well, he didn't want to come in because the bad man in the back of the Nissan Pathfinder followed you into the hogan, and he saw it. And the little boy was about 3, and he could still see those kinds of things. So there's an example of a Navajo medicine man who knows his herbs and knows his, you know, the different things to put together. And what the medicine man said to me was, the dog that came into the garage was a Skinwalker. And by beating it over the head, it released a powder, what they call a corpse powder, which is ground up human bones mixed with hallucinogenics and different things. That it released that, and I breathed it in, and that's what was going to kill me. So what the Navajo medicine man did in his prayer and in his herbs was release that, and it was an amazing thing to see, you know, the positive versus the negative. And sometimes the negative wins. Sometimes the black witchcraft wins. And that's what I always stress. The only reason I wrote this book is I've known about these things, and my stories are, you know, several years old. And I didn't want to write about it because, you know, when you speak of skinwalkers, it brings you to their attention. And so the reason I wrote it was a buddy of mine, J.C. Johnson. He was doing a lot of exploratory work looking for skinwalkers and looking for Bigfoot. And I was just like, you know, I read some of the stuff on his blog, and some of the people were saying, you know, we're going to shoot it, we're going to stab it, we're going to do this and that. And I thought, oh, man, you know, I've got to put it out there so that there's a respect for this power and a respect for this witchcraft, because, it's not something that we can just toy with. It's not something that we see in a movie theater. On the Navajo Reservation and any place in the United States, it's very real, and it's very powerful. So that's the reason I wrote the book, and it's out of respect to those people, not a positive respect, but at the same time, they can't harm you.
It just amazes me the power that they have. The dog being a skinwalker and releasing its bad energy, poison, whatever you want to call it, and just for you to inhale to, damage you, to,
Yeah.
hurt you, kill you. So
Yeah.
yeah, they're a lot more powerful, I think, than what anybody would think they were. They think, the and that's something I wanted to ask. Do you think it's more of a legend or in true about the you told us about the stories about them killing a child, sacrificing a child. Do you
hmm
do you think a lot of people believe that is more of a legend than being based on truth?
I think Native Americans know it's true. They live in a totally different world than we do as non-natives, and so they know it's true. I know here on the Crow Reservation we have different stories of things here, and I'm fascinated by that, and I'm kind of honored that some people have taken the time to share their stories with me. As non-natives, I think we just think it's a legend or it's a myth, or I
Is
I just don't think we really believe it.
is it all Native Americans belief or just the Navajo?
The Navajos, have the Skinwalker tradition, and I think each tribe has their own form or, their own spirits and different things that they believe in. I can't speak for other tribes, but the Navajos and the Hopi, they both believe, in skinwalkers and shapeshifting.
Okay, I have a member of my team, Creepy Legends, that can't be with us in the chat room tonight, but she's listening and
hmm
she sent me a message on Facebook. She wants to know, is there a relationship between, do you believe that there's a relationship between the Dogman and the Skinwalkers?
Excellent question. That's a great question, and we've talked about that on J.C. Johnson's website a couple of times, and I really do. Yeah. And I think that it's difficult for me to address it because I'm kind of on the Skinwalker side of things and understand that and don't understand the Dogmen as well. But I definitely think that there's a relationship. If you look down through history, we've had so many, like you said, myths or legends that involve shape-shifting, be it, everybody's regular during the day, and this is something that comes out at night. And, you have werewolves, you have vampires, you have all the European legends, and these are a different form, but if I don't really know how to explain it. On the Navajo Reservation, when you cross those borders and you're between the four sacred mountains, you go into it's a different zone almost, because these things are very real and they are very active. Whereas in non-native society, we're kind of lulled into a blissful materialism where we really don't see anything. We watch TV, we listen to the radio, we always have a constant numbing influence that keeps us from seeing a lot of these things. So that's kind of how I would have to explain it. I know that probably doesn't give her a good answer, and I apologize, but I do think that there's a relation.
Well, let me throw this out at you. It's just a thought. How
hmm
possible would it be that the Navajo witch is not really changing into this beast, but actually conjuring up the beast from another dimension.
I think that's an excellent way of putting it. I think that when they kill their own relative, their own child, they're making a sacrifice and making a deal with an entity that is not of our dimension. Because when I saw the two skinwalkers, when they came, up at me, I was asked a question once, what did it look like? And I said, we're going to get into Skinwalker Ranch. I was reading the book Skinwalker Ranch, and they talk about these Bigfoot or whatever they were coming through tunnels and coming up out. And that's exactly what it looked like. I mean, I was reading that book going, whoa, are you reading my mind? Because it's just what it looked like. And I would mention that we're on the same latitude, Greasewood, Arizona, as the Skinwalker Ranch in Utah. And the other interesting thing was I did not talk to Bigelow. Bigelow Aerospace called and tried to follow up on the MUFON's, the UFO sighting that we had in Greasewood. And there's another Dogman UFO Skinwalker tied together, is that all these entities, as soon as this UFO shows up, it's like, multiplies the times 10 the sightings of skinwalkers and UFOs in the area. Why is that? Well, I think that goes right back to what you were just saying, is that these are entities from another dimension.
So do you think there's a connection between skinwalkers and UFO encounters as well?
Absolutely, yeah. I could not say what that relationship is. I can tell you about my sighting. There's a place in Greasewood, Arizona, just west of Greasewood. It's a place called Satan's Butte, which I think is an interesting, naming of a butte. But that is the name, and it's been the name Satan's Butte ever since, any of the elders in Greasewood that I talked to can remember. And one medicine man told me, he said that he heard stories when he was just a child, and he's probably in his 70s, of a huge hole on the top of Satan's Butte. And lots of people would go up there and they'd make sacrifices at this hole, and a huge snake would come up out of the hole and then grant wishes. And this is one of the stories that he told me, and I was kind of fascinated by it. And this was long before I saw the UFO. So one evening, I was looking west, and I saw a UFO, for lack of a better term. It was like this huge orb of light hovering over Satan's Butte, and it looked like it was dropping little tendrils of light down into Satan's Butte. I thought, what is that? So I told my wife, I'm like, hey, this happened, and she kind of looked at me and said, do I need to call the loony squad and come out here, put you in a straitjacket, we'll send you down to a hospital or something? She thought I was nuts, and I was like, no, I swear, I saw it. I said, I'm going to get pictures of it. So drove to Flagstaff, bought a real nice Nikon camera, and came back, waited 2 or 3 weeks. Long story short, I got some fantastic pictures of this UFO. And here I am getting these pictures of this UFO, and within probably a day to 2 days, skinwalker activity just goes off the charts in our area. And finally, this old medicine man who had told me the original story about Satan's Butte came over to the house, and he says, hey, I don't know who you told or what you said, but you just need to shut your mouth and, not say anything about what's happening, because, you're causing all this undue activity in the area. And I was like, whoa. And that's when, we had the feds come in and investigate. MUFON came in and investigated. Bigelow Aerospace contacted me through one of their colonels that was now working for them, and we just packed up and moved away, to be quite honest. And I have not been back there since the incident. I'm real happy home in Montana, so I have no desire to go back to Greasewood.
Wow. So we have a question in the chat room. Can they transform at will, or do they need certain conditions?
From what I have been told, they need certain conditions. They all come together, and they go through a ritual, and they go through that ritual, be it in a cave or a hogan or some kind of dwelling. And the rituals and incantations and everything that they go through allows them then to transfer into, or shapeshift into whatever skin that they're wearing.
Wow. Are there children skinwalkers as well?
I have never heard of a child that is a skinwalker. I've never. That's a fascinating question. I've never even thought of it, but in my experience, no.
Wow.
Could there be? Sure.
Now, have you ever been to Skinwalker Ranch?
I have not. I've not been to Skinwalker Ranch. Would I like to go?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Most definitely.
Yeah, I think we all would like to go.
Yeah.
I think they should open it up. Only Jesse Ventura has kind of cruised in there and snuck in, and that's about it.
Now, why do you think they closed it off to people? Because of all the activity, or they just don't want everyone in there?
I think it's because of all the activity. Absolutely. If you remember the one portion in Skinwalker Ranch where the guy comes and the owner at the time allows him to come in and sit and pray or chant in the middle of the field, then the guy jumps up and just runs to his car and takes off. I'm thinking a lot of it has to do with legal liability, because if these entities are coming in through, if that's a portal that's very active, something can happen, and hey, in this sue me, sue you world, you're not going to want to be left holding the cards.
Right. It would be an awesome place to go to, though. The other place I want to go to is the Bridgewater Triangle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Big time bucket list.
Yeah, I know. We just need to get a tour group together, and we'll all sign waivers.
Yeah, I wish they would. I'd sign a waiver. I would do it.
I'd sign a waiver too. Absolutely.
I don't even think he would go for. I don't think he would go for that. He'd probably just laugh at us. Like, whatever.
I'm sure he would.
Yeah. So, what kind of things happen during the presence of a skinwalker?
Well, one night on the ranch, I'm always out feeding horses or cows or chickens or dogs or something. I love animals, and I might mention one fascinating thing that a medicine man told me about skinwalkers is that dogs never can sense a skinwalker until the skinwalker is going away or leaving, and then they bark. Cats, on the other hand, can always sense skinwalkers, which is kind of a fascinating thing. But one of the things that happened was it's usually based on jealousy is a big thing, amongst all people. And so usually it is a skinwalker trying to harm an individual, trying to bring down an individual, and people who employ these skinwalkers or these, this black magic or black witchcraft pay huge amounts of money to, have these things done to other people. And sometimes it has to do with rodeos, sometimes it could have to do with a job promotion, sometimes it could have to do with, somebody gets a new car, a nicer car than them. There's all kinds of different motives behind it. But one of one of the things that they do is they put things inside of you. And you could have, like, a blowgun. And J.C. Johnson, that's what kind of started this whole thing. Right in the front page of my book is a picture of a porcupine quill that was loaded with hallucinogens. And so a Skinwalker had shot that at one of his crew down in Four Corners. And, you know, it missed, thankfully, and JC recovered it from the tent fabric. The guy was going into his tent and somebody shot at him with that. But when I left Greasewood, I had things come out from inside my body when I was driving cross country to see my parents. And, you know, things came out, bones and different pieces, shards and stuff came out. And that's the title of my book is Skinwalker Shards Linger, because those shards will linger in your body. And they're pieces of bone and pieces of, what these Skinwalkers do is they dig up the dead and they break up their bones and they make corpse powder and they make little projectiles to shoot into you. And a good medicine man will come in and he will be able to take them out of you and he'll show them to you. And he can give you amulets, and with a Navajo call it a jish. And I know I'm not pronouncing that, so all the Navajos are going to call in and kill me for it, but that's okay. It's like they put together in a nice leather pouch, they put together a bunch of things to protect you. And, you know, I know some wonderful medicine men, and the one way you can really tell if a medicine man is real and is good, because I'm anticipating your listeners' questions, one of the greatest ways to tell if a medicine man is a good medicine man is he will not name a price. He will not say you have to pay me, and these are not cheap. This is not like, you know, you're going there and paying him $10. You can go there and pay a good medicine man anywhere from $100 to $500 easily to, you know, remedy whatever situation that you're in. So,
hold on.
Not a problem.
Mucinex Fast Max Liquid
Wow.
relieves your worst symptoms with
Not
mucus
sure.
busting.
Are we good now?
There we go. Well, we got a little interference there, not a problem. So, yeah, a good medicine man is going to cost you a lot of money, but he's never going to tell you, hey, you owe me $100. He's going to say whatever you can afford. Some other medicine men, you know, they'll say, oh, yeah, you know, you got to give me $500. And then you kind of have to look at the guy and think, you know, that's just not cool. One really funny wonderful story. My first month on the Navajo Reservation, I go through cultural sensitivity training, and I try to be culturally sensitive, but I'm an idiot, so I wasn't. So I go in. I had this great story for my kids for creative writing. I drove my truck up into my driveway in Pinyon, and I started to get out of my truck. And you know how sometimes you have this, you know, the second thought, this thought that just comes to you. And so this thought came to me, and it said, get back in your truck, drive 1.5, 2 feet forward, shut off your truck, and get out. And so I'm good. I obey my gut feelings, so I do this, get out of my truck, and there, trapped underneath my front wheel, is this huge rattlesnake. I'm just like, whoa, it would have bitten me. Yeah, I have no doubt. So I tell my kids this story the next day in school, and my kids are just like, you know, their eyes are like saucers just looking at me, and I'm thinking, wow, that must have been a good story. I am such a cool teacher, you know. So I go home, you know, and I'm just hanging out. It's a Friday night, about 8 o'clock. I get this knock on the door. I answer the door, and one of my students is standing at the door, and she says, Mr. Loris, could you come down to my dad's house? He wants to talk to you. And her brother is just like hell on wheels in my class. So I'm thinking, oh, geez, great, you know. So I'm like, yeah, no problem. I'll come right down. She goes, no, I need to get in the van and ride down. And it's like a bunch of my kids from creative writing are in the van, you know. And So we cruise down to this house, and all my creative writing students are there. And they're all sitting around the living room on the floor, and I'm like, whoa, what did I do? And Mr. Yazzie looks at me and he says, did you tell a story about a snake today in class? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, in Navajo tradition, we're not allowed to talk about those kinds of things. And I'm like, oh, they must have missed that in the cultural sensitivity training, and everybody laughs. And he's like, do you mind if we have a prayer for you? And I said, no, I'd be honored. I said, that'd be awesome. Thank you. So they take this big cup and they pass it around, and everybody's supposed to be taking a sip, from this cup, big coffee mug. And I'm really, really nervous because, it's my first time in a Navajo home. It's my first time with all my students. I'm nervous. I got a dry mouth. I'm like, I'm going to have more than a sip. So, it looks like water. It's all clear. And I take this big, giant gulp, and I drink like half of it. And my students all look at me. And see, I missed this part in cultural sensitivity training, too. It was peyote tea.
It was what?
It was peyote tea.
Oh.
Yes. So it was like this, I took this massive hit of hallucinogenic, and I had no idea. It tasted like water. And so 2 of my students pick me up, take me outside, I'd vomit, and I saw the most incredible things that I've ever seen in my life after doing that. But you talk about a cultural faux pas. I mean, what a gaffe. I was an idiot, but I get to school on Monday morning, and guess what's sitting in the middle of my desk? the coffee mug from that night. My Navajo people have the most wonderful sense of humor, and my kids teased me about it for 3-4 months after that. And if any of them are listening right now, I'm sure Julian Bly is just laughing because I know it was him that put the coffee cup there.
Well, that's good that they got a sense of humor with it.
Oh, they do. The Navajo people probably have the best sense of humor. Navajo ladies are they tease, and it's the best thing that you can ever experience because they call you out on everything. And they really don't let you get away with anything, and it's wonderful. I would encourage anybody who's going into teaching and thinking about the Navajo Reservation or thinking about the Crow Reservation, we need awesome teachers here, and go. It's a third world country inside of our great country, and it's not right, but still, it's a wonderful experience. I'd encourage everybody to go.
Well, I have another question.
Cool.
Why is it that many Native Americans do not like to discuss their traditions and beliefs to the outsiders?
That's a great question. And there's no easy answer. I would probably tell a joke to give you an answer. It's because we all claim to be Cherokee. So that's a joke. Sorry. But my wife's Native, so, she's Navajo, and you don't know how many times we're, back east, and everybody comes up to us and goes, oh, yeah, my grandmother was a Cherokee princess. And you're like, okay. So I think it's just because they tried to share, and then everybody wants to become an Indian, and I really don't know why they want to become an Indian, but, I'm, super happy being Hungarian. It's just, they just don't open up, and they're not going to open up until they really know you. I went to more Navajo ceremonies and squaw dances, and I know everybody's going to beat me up because I used this word squaw, but that's what it's called. It's called a squaw dance. And, I went to all kinds of wonderful things. Once they got to know me, and once they found out that I really respected their culture and was fascinated by it.
Wow. Are you still with us?
I'm still here,
Okay.
absolutely.
I had a funny noise, so the Skinwalkers are still with
hovering
us.
over the house yet.
So I guess this is a good question to ask. How can I ward off a Skinwalker?
That's a great question. You are the first person ever to ask me that, and it's a difficult question. I would say, in my book, I said a very simple answer of it's your own personal faith. That's the only way you're going to ward off a skinwalker, and you really can't ward off skinwalkers if they've set their sights on you. They're going to come and they're going to do their business, but my own personal faith is the only thing that has preserved me through everything that I've been through. So, it's very difficult. If you don't have any faith, then, you're not going to, you're going to succumb to whatever they have in mind, and you might still, your faith might not be strong enough to, and that's when, for example, for me, I had to go to the medicine man or I would have been dead the next day. So, it's a combination. And then I would also say there's and I'm sure you can get it online. It's called bitter medicine. And bitter medicine is, I have no idea what it's made from, but the Navajos use it, and it takes away evil, and it takes away all the negative things out of you. We use a lot of sage, and we smudge a lot here at home. We burn cedar a lot. There's many, many different traditional things that you can do, but you have to learn, and you have to learn how to pray, and you have to learn, how to approach these things. And I was really blessed to spend a lot of time with a guy in Ceiba del Cai, down in Arizona, and he taught me many, many things, and I in exchange chiropracted all his horses. So, that's the great part about Native American people is there's a lot of barter, there's a lot of exchange in that sense. So, if you really want to learn, you're going to have to go and live amongst the people, and you're going to really have to grow your faith, and you're going to have to, like you said at the beginning of the show about me, is be able to think outside the box. While I was raised, a really, really strict Baptist, I have to be able to think outside the box. And while Christ is the foundation of my personal faith, I also have to accept and acknowledge and embrace, that there's a lot more that goes on in our world than, the very narrow-minded Baptists want to think goes on in our world. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yes. Yep. There's a lot of, the only way I can describe it is closed-minded people. They won't, my husband has always been into the paranormal since he was like 17, 18 years old. And he's more on the cryptid side, I'm more on the ghost hunting side. But when we first got together and he was telling me these stories, I'd be like, oh my gosh, he's a whack job. What the heck have I done? And then I kind of talked him into putting the team together. And I was a strong skeptic. I mean, I would not open my mind up to it. I was like, this is crazy. Until we went on an investigation. And I'm kind of like one of those people that I have to see it to believe it kind of people. And,
sure.
First EVP, and I'm like, ooh, this is real. This is really real.
Yeah.
So it kind of, it gives me a different look, and you got to approach all of it, life in general, with an open mind.
Yeah. I think if I hadn't traveled outside the United States and lived outside of the United States, I would have that very narrow-minded, closed worldview that many, many people have. But, traveling in Central America and traveling in Asia really opened my mind and really allowed me to be able to think, wow, there's a whole different world out there. And then going to the Navajo Reservation, then I had to go, oh, there's a whole other dimension out there, too.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
It's fascinating.
Well, I posted the Amazon website for your book, but
Thank
let
you.
us know, do you have another website that they can purchase your book from?
You know, what I would do is I'm cheap, so I'm trying hold off on buying the book because I'm trying to get it so that it goes what's called Amazon Kindle KDP, so that it's free. Hopefully that'll go into effect tomorrow, so we can get
Oh, okay.
some free copies out to it'll be electronic copies. You'll just have to download it. But to all your listeners, hopefully that'll be up and running tomorrow. I'm hoping. And if not, go to www.oldironadventure.com. That's my blog, and almost all the stories in my book are on my blog. So, and not a lot of my research and stuff like that that's in the book and the emails and things like that. Those aren't on the blog, but pretty much the core of it is.
Okay. Okay. Well, yeah, I'll definitely have to check that out tomorrow because I read everything from my Kindle, so definitely have to
Oh,
check that
cool,
out.
cool. All
So,
right.
anything up and coming you're going to be investigating, maybe starting a new book?
I'm hoping to start a new book on what's called the Little People, and that deals with the Crow Little People. And boy, it's fascinating stuff. But I will have to say that the Crow are not very forthcoming when it comes to giving up their stories. So I'm going to have to go to a lot more sweat lodges to, maybe I'll be a shadow of myself by the time I leave Sweat Lodge, but at least I'll have some great stories for you.
So, fill us in a little bit. Crow people? Is that what you said?
Uh-huh. The Crow Reservation is, let's see, straight up from Sheridan, Wyoming, Crow Agency and Lodge Grass, Montana are two of the towns. I live in Lodge Grass. I live on a ranch just outside of Lodge Grass. And the Crow people are surrounded by, let's see, we have Cheyenne people to our east, and they were the original scouts for Custer, and Custer Battlefield is about 20 miles from, maybe 15 miles from the house here. So I encourage everybody to come up, stop in at the ranch, visit us. It's a wonderful place to live, and you can check out all the pictures on my blog. I'm always posting pictures. I don't just write about paranormal. I've written about. I try to do a lot of humor because humor is the best medicine.
So, I'm still stuck on these crow people.
Oh, that's cool. They're Native American people.
Is
They were
it
the scouts for
Pequoujis or
Custer.
Pequoujis? I know it's said different, and I'll be corrected when I get off the air by my husband.
That's cool.
I mean, is it the same? Pequoujis? Or
That I don't know. I
okay,
don't know. I can
okay.
look it up though as soon as I get
They're
off.
little troll-like people. They
Yeah,
can shift
well,
shape.
the little people are fascinating. They really are because there's a mountain range just west of us, and it's called the Pryor Mountains, and the little people. There's wonderful readings that you can do online about them, but they live there, and then they just kind of come all across the Crow Reservation, and you can talk to them. I've seen them, and you can ask them for favors. They have really, really interesting ways of manifesting themselves. They love little shiny objects. They love to take like rings and jewelry and stuff like that. They love eating my sweets because I'm Hungarian, so I'm addicted to good Danishes and Baelish and things like that. So they take my sweets, they take my cookies, they eat them. At first, I thought it was, the wife taking the cookies, and she was swearing up and down that she wasn't. And then one of our friends goes, "No, it's the little people. They like your cookies. Just deal with it." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So
Yeah,
they're
that's gonna have to be a whole nother
they're
show because I like the little crow people.
okay.
We'll have to get together for another show for the Crow people. I like that.
That would be awesome. Anytime. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much. And we'll get together when you get all your material together. We'll get together and get you back on for the Crow people.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, everybody. I want to know more about the Crow people. And I'm sure Chris will correct me when I get up there. But here we go. For all you listening, do yourself a favor, go lock your doors, close your blinds, and don't forget to look under the bed tonight. However, it may not do any good, because whether you believe it or not, the paranormal is real and it's all around us. I'm Vonda, and you've been listening to the Haunted Harvest Moon on Z Talk Radio. Have a good night, everyone. Thanks for listening.